Oh, welcome to the show. Officially, it's the start of a new show, a new season, and we've got quite the interesting guest here today. And before I jump back into you, I am the host of the show, so I'll just start all the way from me. And I just want to say welcome back to Not Yet Mature Studios. And today I've got a great guest. Got a guest named Faris, and I'm going to read his bio in a moment, but that definitely stirs a lot of curiosity on my end, I must say. I'm not quite sure at this point if you are absolutely horrible at your job because you've been all around the place, or maybe you're just brilliant at what you do. But we'll give you the floor to tell us, which end of the bargain you see yourself at. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Deon Richter, business developer by trade. And one thing that specifically trickled my fancy into hosting you today was actually when I did my studies in business, when I started my MBA. I remember talking to one of my professors, one of my role models that I really look up to, and we spoke about a couple of things, but I remember specifically the conversation we had when I asked him, what his advice would be to me when, I pursue this business journey, consulting with businesses and things like that. What is the most important thing to have to make a success out of any company or to consult in any companies? And I remember specifically, he told me, he said, the first thing or the most important thing, according to him, is that you need to be able to have effective communication systems within a company. And he left it at there, and I really just, went into a couple of things. And as I journeyed through business, it always was at the back of my head, and I constantly would just, read up about it and do some research. And down that rabbit hole of communications and silo bustings and everything like that, I came to the conclusion, not to the conclusion, but to the main topic that the biggest, how can I say, amplifier of good communication is understanding emotional intelligence in a company. And ever since then, I was so grasped by how emotional intelligence can really assist effective communication in a company and its processes and its systems, because it's kind of like a language to know. I'll let you be the expert on the topic. And when I read your profile, I'm like, okay, this is the person that I want to talk to about this, because clearly you are the expert. I've read the theory, I've looked at a couple of things, but you're the expert when it comes to this. So before I let you introduce yourself, I absolutely loved your bio. So, just going to read it from Matchmaker, and it says, starting my career as a school teacher, working in different countries. I then moved in the business world, working for an energy company, via stint trying my hand as a journalist and working for the police. I then moved into strategy consulting, which took me to work with numerous clients. Eventually, I took the leap to leverage all my experience to set up my own firm, a firm helping other businesses improve their effectiveness, and the list goes on. So I need to ask you, this first is teacher. In what countries? Let's start with your teaching.
Okay. Let's start with the teaching. Yeah, so I used to teach two subjects, high school. I used to teach high school math and high school economics. I taught in 4 different countries. So I taught in the UK, but I also taught in El Salvador, in Nepal, and in Palestine. So a bit of variety there, but I enjoyed each and every, they were all unique challenges. I could probably talk on multiple podcasts just about those experiences.
So what kid caused you to get out of teaching?
Do you know what? Like I said, each of those schools, each of those environments were different. Some were incredibly rich schools where the challenge was getting the kids motivated. Some were incredibly poor schools, particularly in Nepal, where all the kids were farmers. So the challenge was actually, were they going to go on beyond school, or were they even going to complete school? Actually, the last school I taught at was in the UK, and what was the kids? It was a very, very tough school. So it was the kind of school where the kids come to school with knives, and they regularly tell you that they're going to, mess you up, and you actually start to believe them after a while. So it's a real challenge, and it really tests your sort of devotion to teaching in many ways. And lots of my colleagues departed at that school.
Sure. I mean, I can only imagine. So, at the end of the day, I mean, your career journey includes diverse roles, as we mentioned, our school teacher, journalist, consultant.
Yeah.
How have these varied experiences shaped your approach to business development and consulting? Like, how did that take you from teaching and journalist to decide that's going to shape me into the consultant that I am today?
Well, I'm a massive proponent of trying more stuff, right? Yeah, I do this in my not just my professional career, but in my personal life. Try new skills. You don't know what you don't know, and you can there's always something you can absorb from it. Now, obviously, I wasn't that in tune with that approach when I started as a school teacher. And to be clear, I started as a school teacher largely as a vehicle to travel the world. But when I reflected on the skills that it left me with, they were unbelievable. As a school teacher, you've got to stand in front of 30 children hour after hour, and you've got to entertain them, you've got to educate them, you've got to basically be on top of them and be in tune with them, which, when you think about it, who would want those skills in any other profession? So that communication, that ability to read a room. But it was only when I reflected on it that I realized I could transfer it into other careers, and specifically what I'm doing today.
Would you say that teaching is something that taught you emotional intelligence, or did you use emotional intelligence in your teaching, right? So what kind of was a chicken and egg first scenario in that?
Oh, well, I mean, let's be clear. When I first started teaching, I was terrible. I was absolutely terrible. I walked into the room and I thought, I improved, right? But I was arrogant enough to think, I'll just walk into this room, I'll share my knowledge with these kids, and they'll all be like instantly better. But do you know what most of the kids do? They either go, I don't get it, or they're like bored, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the reality. And I was sitting there frustrated. So my response was just to talk to them louder, or get more angry with them. And it wasn't until one day my boss stepped in and he said, "What's going on?" I said, "Well, it's the kids' fault. They're not listening." He said, "Look, they are 11. Do not expect them to change. You are the adult in the room. You should be the one who's changing, right? Instead of just only teaching in one way, have you thought about doing other things?" Other things, like that sounds like more effort. But he was absolutely spot on. And what he taught me was a valuable lesson for life. Do not expect the other person to adapt. If you can adapt for them, you will be much more effective as a communicator, as an influencer, just as a human being in general. So that was my first awakening to emotional intelligence, and why, and that's just the first steps, realizing that you need to change. But then how do you change? That's what emotional intelligence comes in. That's the ability to read a room and go, actually, this is what they need from me right now. I will provide that. So I guess it really, when you say chicken egg, it woke me up. I then sort of quickly learned a lot of stuff about it and started testing it. And not everything I tested worked, but the more I got better at it, the more I could try new things and have a higher success rate.
Okay, so let's say you walk into a room back to the 11-year-olds and you need to explain to them the concept of emotional intelligence. What are we looking at? Because this is now a very known term that people see when they read business books and influence. But when people scale their companies, they unfortunately look at resumes in terms of people's skill set and education, and now they need to make that work. And when I scale companies, I see firsthand why things don't work, and that's the biggest thing is the emotional intelligence aspect. That's by far the biggest thing, because people struggle to connect emotionally, and there's just miscommunication and lack of team effort. But take me back, if you need to explain to someone, especially 11-year-old, I love it when an 11-year-old understands something, then it's properly communicated. So what is emotional intelligence? What are we looking at?
Hey, look, forget the textbook definitions is what I say, is you will know emotionally intelligent people. They're the kind of people you like to spend time with. They're the kind of people who know the right question to ask you at the right time. They're the kind of people who, when there's They can tell a good story, they can listen, they just seem to get it right most of the time, and therefore people gravitate towards it. When I was used to be in consulting, we used to call it the airport test, which was part of our recruitment. And we say to each other, did they pass the airport test? What did that mean? That meant if you imagine you were at an airport and your plane got cancelled for 24 hours, would you want to sit with that other individual for 24 hours? Right? That was a test of emotional intelligence or likability, or, call it what you like. But that's basically a simple way of thinking about emotional intelligence, I would say, to an 11-year-old.
Okay, so I take it you've met quite some emotional intelligent people. What would be the opposite? Do you call them idiots?
No, they're not idiots.
No, I'm teasing. I just wanted to test your emotional intelligence as well. Just practice what you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Do you know? I always tell people emotional intelligence is a muscle you can develop. Right. So I wouldn't call them idiots. I'd just call them maybe flabby. Right. They're out of shape. They're out of shape.
Out of shape.
But they can get out of shape. They're emotionally out of shape. Right. So the good news is, with a little bit of work, you can get a six-pack, an emotional intelligence six-pack.
Okay. So what the significance in like today's business landscape? What have you seen within taking emotional intelligence, before we get to any strategy or anything, like emotional intelligence implementation, like how does one implement it? Like, how do you train that muscle? How do you get rid of that flab? And then what is the significance thereof in today's business landscape?
Okay, so if you want to get rid of your flab, start by looking internally. Look at your own moods. Look at what impact that has on your behaviors. So you might not have sat down and thought about it, but you're probably aware, right? When you get angry, what do you do? Do you go quiet or do you go loud? Right? When you find something very challenging, do you retract or do you step forward? So the more you can understand yourself and your behaviors when you experience different moods, that's the first step of emotional intelligence. Because, like it or not, you will impact others by your mood. Right? So being aware and being able to control your moods a little bit, or your behaviors when you have moods, is very, very important first step of emotional intelligence. Then the second step is observing and trying to deduce what moods other people are in. Are they happy? Are they sad? Are they bored? Are they interested? Because once you start to realize that, then you can move on to the last step, which is, can you adapt your style to help them with that mood, whatever they're in, and make. So that's really what's at the heart of emotional intelligence.
Okay, so when organization approach you and they say, okay, well, come and help us out with this, what do you look at? Do you look at the individual? Do you look at the team? Do you look at the company? Do you look at the company culture? Like, where do you start evaluating to understand? Because, I mean, let's say a massive corporation comes to you and they say, listen, we need your assistance. Surely you're not going to go through 500 employees in the company. Do you start with the company culture?
You start with the company culture, but where we tend to focus is either we look at specific teams and how much emotional flows into that team, and particularly crucial teams. Like this is a team that is really crucial to sales or is crucial to operations. Or the other sort of important place to focus on is leadership. How much emotional intelligence does the leadership group have? Now, often what you'll see is a bunch of senior individuals who are obviously very technically proficient. They're just not great at communicating, or they're just not great at, connecting with their own workforce. And that is a big indication of a lack of emotional intelligence.
Okay. So I'm really just curious about this. When you take, let's say, positivity versus negativity, which one's stronger? For example, in a team, if you look at a team setup and your leader shows very strong, either positive or negative, I don't know, emotional intelligence, it can be both. And you've got one person in the team, maybe not the leader, that's really just, negative emotional intelligence to them. Which one tends to come out on top? The stronger emotional intelligence, if we want to put it like that, or the weaker emotional intelligence? Does one tend to drag the other one out, or the other one tend to, pull it up?
Well, I mean, we've all heard about the talented jerk, and we've all heard about the one rotten apple. And, that is true. If left unchecked, that will have more corrosive effect than somebody with, super important emotional intelligence, or somebody super positive in the team. So, but here's the other thing about human beings. It's very hard to be the only person exhibiting a behavior if all the rest of the group is exhibiting the opposite. And now this is shown time and time again through scientific research. Yeah, when groups reach a critical mass, the power of social proof and consistency tends to, even the naysayers, it won't bring them round, but it'll at least shut them up. So it's not 100% for me saying, well, it's just the jerk's fault, right? If that super emotionally intelligent person is doing their job and permeating throughout the group, then that should nullify that behavior they check. If that makes sense.
No, that makes 100% sense. I was always just very curious on, if you're sitting with a team and there's one with a problem or one with a strength, would you rather promote one? Would you rather fire one if you can't change? But I think in essence you explained it very well. So in your experience, how can businesses measure and assess emotional intelligence to drive performance and productivity?
So invariably, every business can improve its emotional intelligence. All right. So I don't tell firms to worry too much about measuring formally their emotional intelligence. Well, you'll get a score. Woohoo! Well done to you. Businesses are far more interested in measuring their outputs. Measuring their key performance indicators or their OKRs. Things like sales, customer satisfaction. It just so happens, as I tell them, we're going to improve that through emotional intelligence. But measure the output. Don't measure the emotional intelligence, right? Because that's a lot of effort to get. And I often say to clients, don't pay us unless those metrics go up that you tell us is important, right? Because I know that's what's far more important to you than a stepping stone of having more emotionally intelligent people. And I can, prove that time and time again. I'm working with a team of traders who have some of the lowest, savviest emotional intelligence. And the impact is that their performance as a trading team went down. But by introducing more emotional intelligence to that group, their trading performance went up. And their boss was super happy that they were making more money. He wasn't super happy because I had this specific conversation. He couldn't give a damn that they were more emotionally intelligent. He was like, yeah, well, that's just something you did with them, right?
As long as they make more money.
Exactly. That's the reality of people who pay the checks. As much as they're not going to pay as big a check to make people feel better or improve a certain skill as they are to move the outcome.
Well, I'm a firm believer of this. I'm as well, might not know, but here's a spoiler again. So I'm a business developer, and specifically what we develop is startups, assisting them to scale. But there's a specific point or aspect in that business, and that aspect is sustainable leadership development. In other words, we work with the people aspect of a company, teaching them to be stronger leaders, but also naturally teaching them to sustain in that leadership, right? We don't want a feel-good moment and something fades away. So I'm all, buy-in of what you're selling, but how difficult do you find it in today's world where companies and organizations are really just in this look, if we look at the companies that's in the finite workspace or mind games and versus the infinite ones, the ones in the finite ones we see is the ones that they're just chasing the pound or chasing the dollar, just product for money. That's it. They don't care about the customer churn rate. They don't care about the employee churn rate. They just go for it. Massive corporations like that's really in it for the infinite game, and you can think of your own. They tend to naturally care more about the employees, or at least that's the facade that they put out for the world. Now, if you need to approach companies, how difficult is it for you to persuade or to sell to companies the idea of you need to work on your people? That's the biggest thing that separates you from finite versus infinite games. Do you find that challenging?
It is a challenge, to be honest, and I made that mistake in the early days of my business by focusing on that side of the equation rather than focusing on their side of the equation, which is the problems that we're facing. like I sort of alluded to before, that's easier to get traction with, rather than going, hey, you really need to invest in your people. And so, my approach nowadays is very much to listen, and invariably, if you listen in the right way, people will share their problems, and it's then helping them structure their problems. And invariably, there's a people element to it. And sometimes it takes them a long time, right? Let me tell you an example of one of my clients, which I'd love to say was a one-off, but what happened was they had this massive problem with warehousing costs. Okay, so it's a big consumer goods product company. They made lots of things, right? And they invariably, sometimes they make too much and they have to stock it in a warehouse. And then invariably, if they stock it, sometimes things go off and they have to get rid of it. So anyway, they were carrying a lot of extra cost. And when they did an initial deep dive into why this was happening, they said, oh, the problem must be with our forecasting model. We're clearly not got a good enough model to forecast how many units we need each month. So let's say shampoo, how many bottles of shampoo we need each month to sell. So they paid a consulting firm like a million gangs to come in and build a better forecast model. Didn't solve the problem at all. The problem still persisted. Okay, then they said, okay, well, we must have terrible processes. Okay, well, the model is great, but we have terrible processes. So they brought in a second consulting firm and spent probably 5 million with them to re-engineer all their processes. The problem was still there. I was then having a coffee with the guy, the client there, and he was telling me all about this. And I said, tell me about how the decision gets made around how many bottles of shampoo to make each month. And he described this scenario where 2 different teams in the business had to come together every month and agree a number. And what was happening in that meeting was one of the teams was massively introverted and one of the teams was massively extroverted. And when you put them in a room, the introverts would always lose to the extroverts, even though the introverts were the knowledge people.
Yeah.
And so they would always lose. And the extroverts would always say, well, no, we can make, we can sell thousands of bottles of shampoo. So let's do that. And I said to him, have you ever thought about overconfident? I said, have you ever thought about fixing that conversation? He said, what are you talking about? How do you fix the conversation? He said, if I was to come in, as I've done elsewhere, this is what I do. I get those 2 teams to work better together. He said, okay, we'll bring you on a trial. We basically worked with those 2 teams, but predominantly teaching the introverts how to speak to extroverts. And what happened is we almost evaporated that overproduction because they were having a better quality of conversation. They were able to be more emotionally intelligent when they were in that conversation. And that just evaporated the decision, being too hard. But, often it takes clients to go through those first 2 steps, assuming there's a technological or a process solution that can be implemented without just thinking, do you know what? It might be the people who are causing this problem.
So there's 2 things that I take from that story. Number 1 is I should definitely be consulting in the UK because clearly that's way more money than you make here. Number 2 is if they paid the first person a million, the second 5 million, is that where you made your first 10 million? Was
that's where I
needed to be okay. So now you get a foot in the door to just show them exactly what I agree with. That human aspect of communication. That's till today, that's the first thing. Like when I consult with companies on various strategies on anything, the first thing that I look at, there's 2 things that I look at. Number 1 is I look at processes that is currently in place, and I just completely ask why on everything. Like I need to understand why you've got all these processes, whether it's a good why or a bad why, doesn't matter. The second thing that I look at is communication. Who communicates to who? Why, how often, how's communication tracked back, and then I look for all the loopholes of silos, right? That's for me the biggest reason why companies fail is silos. So that's a strategy that I love. But in your experience, when you walk into a room like that, when you consult with it, naturally, because you consult in this, you're more of an extrovert. Do you see yourself as an extrovert or just a natural communicator? And so does a follow-up question to that, and I'll give you the space. In that space, does other extroverts or natural communicators feel threatened by you, or kind of like, in the sense of they want to overshadow you because you're not coming in and telling their team what to do? And then in the same sense, how do the the non-communicators and non-good communicators, your mathematician minds, your statistical minds, are super important, but they, introverts, they don't communicate as well. How do they react to someone like you when you enter that space?
So firstly, sir, I'm an ambivert. I'm a total chameleon. So I will flex to what the room, the situation needs. Now I've learned that, and that's at the core of what I teach a lot of leaders. So with either the extrovert or the introvert, a key part of that is developing trust very quickly. And you can develop trust in a series of ways. A large part of how I do that is I will meet each team member individually to understand them and build a bit of credibility and authenticity with them. But also, it's about a combination of techniques, right? So sometimes you might need to be like two stacks. If there's two extroverts, you might need to put somebody in their place. Right, and I call that often bruising egos quickly, because they will pay more attention, and they might, so it's a bit about assessing. It's not so much their extrovert versus introvert; it's their personal drivers. And sometimes it's about creating the space for the quieter people. So there's a lot that you can do both in terms of your style, but also the process. So let's take that one about the introverts, for example. Something I pretty much do with every team I work with nowadays is tell people, right, from now on, we know what we're going to shout out. If you have an idea, we don't shout it out. Right? What's going to happen instead is I'm going to circulate the topic we're talking about. You're going to submit your views on it or your opinion before the meeting. Or if it happens to come up in the meeting, you're going to sit in silence, write your view, and submit it to me. I'm then going to collate them and take people's names off them. And then I'm going to reshare them, and you're going to spend time reading every view and then ask any questions about the view. So it no longer becomes about A, whoever's the first to shout out. B, it takes away things like groupthink or hierarchy bias, like, oh, it's the boss's idea, therefore it's the best idea. And do you know what? Therapy really helps the introverts in particular, who might be quiet or might have some great ideas, but nobody's ever listened to them, so they stop even offering them. And sometimes it liberates them, because sometimes those people have the best quality ideas. And I remember one time I did it with a team, and as we were reading out the view, someone went, "That's a brilliant idea. Is that Joel's idea?" I went, "No." "Is it Steve's idea?" "No." Is it Peter's idea?" "No." And they literally went to every member of the team before they even thought of saying, "Well, is it that really quiet person in the room? Is it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it was their idea, actually." They're like, "Oh my God, that person actually knows something," right? So part process, but also part style, can really unlock the different personality types.
Okay, that's amazing. So when you said you work with a lot of emotional intelligence and obviously you do strategic consulting as well, like what type of strategic or strategy consultation or development do you do in organizations, and how do you naturally just implement your emotional intelligence with those processes or with that strategy development, if we're going to put it per se?
Yeah. So the kind of strategy work we do goes from anything from what's your vision? Let's all let's get a clear vision for this company, all the way down to what are the KPIs that you should be measuring. So typically it's getting to a 2 or 3 year strategic plan for the company or for the business unit or for the team. So that's what we offer. Now, I know a lot of people offer that, but the key way we bring in emotional intelligence is you want everyone in that team to be on board with the idea, with the strategy. Right? In my previous life as a strategy consultant, we didn't care about that part. We just delivered a strategy and dropped it on clients. And said, "Thanks, give us the money now." A bit like that's that story of the people who got the new forecast model. They didn't care if the model worked. They just got paid their £1 million to develop the model. It's the same as the process. We've changed all the process. Oh, we don't care that people aren't following them, right? That's not what we paid us for, right? But I always said to clients, if we don't get alignment, then we're not successful as a company, right? I would rather have the 8 of you loving a small idea than only one of you being bought into a big idea. Right. So that, and so obviously the way we get there is through emotional intelligence, creating a space where everyone can share their views, where everyone gets excited, understands it. Because so often groups will be sitting there going, I don't love this, I don't understand it, but I'm not going to say anything. And so then the boss thinks it's been approved and everyone's bought into it. They all leave the room and they start doing their own thing. They're like, well, that plan doesn't really matter. So that's how we bring emotional intelligence. Now, we do a variety of things. You know, a lot of emotion, how we bring about emotional intelligence is the same way I used to teach kids. It's through gamification and fun, right? So we do a lot of things like wargaming, right? Stress testing of strategies, right? We play card games in the boardroom. We turn things into games so that people can see things in a different light, kind of break down barriers that might have been persisting in that group of individuals, so that they can make better decisions.
So you're obviously exploring those things within company hours. So do you find the boss to kind of like put pressure on you because you're taking away his productivity? And do they only tend to, get that sense of ease once productivity actually increased after you being there?
It's a great question. I mean, usually what I say to clients is, if this isn't an important project, let's just can it now, right? If it's not one of your top 3 priorities, let's not even start, right? And that's usually a good barometer, because if you find it pushing back on that and then you're going to be needy, you say, well, we're not really going to achieve anything here, because you're going to slowly chip away at this. But if they do say, no, this is important, then it kind of gives you the bandwidth to have a bit more of a freedom to play. But then you've still got to prove to them that you can deliver. And what I mean by that is, I've talked about the wargaming. Pound for pound, or rand for rand, is one of the most impactful things that I do that guarantee you senior people really enjoy. Right? And it's happened to me multiple times where I've been running a war game and it's like 8 o'clock on a Friday night, and the CEO will stand to me and say, let's play one more time. Right, I'm having so much fun.
Okay.
Right. And I'll say to him, no, we've learned enough. It's time to send all the team home, because you can see the team are beginning to fire. But he's like, oh, right, okay. And that's when you've got them, right? They've stopped even clock watching. They are just immersed in the fun side of it, as well as the learning, that they'll say, and that same CEO said, this is being brilliant. I want you to come back every year and run this for us, even if we don't have a strategy to test. And I was like, that's great. Right? That's great from a business point of view, but it's great for your business.
Definitely. So, last 2 questions on my end that I really just want to pick your brain. So, when you work with corporations, with clients, with organizations, and you specifically work with their vision strategy, right, and how they should move better towards that, do you find people actually, surprisingly don't know what their visions are or what their vision should be, first of all, and then second of all, and I would love to hear some examples if you have some, but second of all, do you think one of the reasons because of that is they are too focused on chasing their competitors or competitors in the industry, that they tend to naturally just adopt their vision than focusing on what they should be doing in the first place? What's your thoughts on that?
It's a great question, right? And two things spring to mind, or 2 stories. One, let me tell you about this company I worked with, a startup. And there was 4 directors, and we were doing a vision session. And I said to them before the meeting, can you send me your vision, and can you send me all the projects you've worked on in the last 3 years? So they sent me this information. And I walked into the room and stopped me and said, guys, before we start this vision meeting, you've got to help me out, because I looked at your vision and I looked at your projects, but something's wrong here. Either your vision's wrong, because I said the 2 don't match. So either your vision's wrong, or you're really shit salespeople and you've got a vision, but you can't sell any of that kind of work. So which is it? And I said, I don't mind. I'm not here to judge, but we need to be honest that these 2 don't match. Because their vision has said something like, we want to save the environment, we want to do all good. But their projects were just anything. They were just doing any work. And a few minutes silence passed, and got to about 5 minutes silence. And silence is a very powerful thing if you have that. And one of the directors just went, can I be honest? I just want to make money. I just want to retire by the time I'm 50. I don't care how I do it. And the second guy went, I'm pretty much the same as that. And it became clear this was their driving force. I said, so why did you write that vision? And they said, well, we felt we had to say something that the market wanted to hear. We couldn't just tell people. I said, okay, well, like that's not helpful, right? And now, you are confusing your customers, you're confusing your workforce because they had employees, and you're confusing your shareholders even. So I'm not saying write your vision as we all want to retire by the time we're 50, but don't go as far as stating something as far out, because you'll be held accountable to that.
Sure.
And I said, I don't care what it is, right? But I need you all to be a bit more honest, and I need you all to be aligned. So that's the first part of the story. And it's amazing how many people create a vision because they think that's what others want to hear. And then the second part is the bit I love, which is about the alignment. I have this great activity we do with senior people, which I say, okay, right, walk into a room. I say, before you guys start talking, I want you all to write down your vision in 20 to 30 words, no more, on a Post-it note or a piece of paper, without talking to anyone else. We're then going to compare your Post-its, right? And we're going to see how closely aligned you are, because this is the way you're talking about your company to others. Yep. And it's amazing the discrepancy when you compare those. Let's say it's a group of 4, 6, 8 people. 8 people, there's even like a little bit of difference will be massive, right? And they're always shocked by how differently they each see their own company.
I mean, that's just amazing. That's exactly what I thought as well. I love the confirmation that you're giving in some of my thoughts. It means that I'm not completely too whacked off the road. That South Africa and England, except for rugby, sometimes we can still be around the same table. I mean, rugby is the only time when it's not allowed, I guess.
Rugby, cricket, there's a few things, but yeah.
Okay, there's a few things. At least we're all on the same page when we say anything but Australia. Then we can sit around.
That's all right. It's okay. Yeah, and this is where
sorry for the Aussie listeners. We'll talk again when we talk World Cup. You were just first out in the World Cup rugby, but I mean they at least took the cricket, so that's fine. Okay, Faris, I mean you saw my some of the topics that I wanted to discuss, and I promise we'll touch again. But in closing, I want to hear this your success concept. I mean, you put a math equation out there. Success equals IQ times equal times FQ. Please explain and just give us a practical example of that in closing.
Absolutely. So the famous Shiogato equation, and Shiogato is the name of my company, by the way, which is the Japanese word for a sharpening stone. But so if you want to be successful enough, first of all, you've got to have a vision. You've got to have a goal, right? If you don't, stop, work out what your vision or where your goal is. But so let's say you've got that vision, your goal. Then you need IQ, right? And IQ isn't your Mensa score. It's your ability to come up with the best solution or the best idea to get you towards your goal. Okay? Now, that's the first component, but it's not enough, right? Too many companies, and if you think back to the example I said about the consumer goods company, they went all in on IQ. Right, the answer is this. Right, let's just do this. And I experienced that a lot in my consulting career, particularly in strategy consulting. We would walk in with a really smart answer. But the second part of the component is EQ. EQ is the ability to take others with you on the journey. Because if you travel alone with your idea, that's all you've got is a piece of paper. You need others to buy in, and that's where the emotional intelligence. But still, that's not enough. You can have people bought in, you can have a great idea. But the third component, and this is what I really realized and finally clicked, is you need focus. And so there's FQ, which is focus quotient, right? It is the ability to focus on your idea, right? And here we see too many companies doing too many things simultaneously, and therefore they're not doing any one thing well. And so the great result we have is just help them rationalize. But there's other aspects of focus that also come into play. But have a great idea, take others on the journey with you, and then be focused to deliver it, and then you'll be successful.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to put that on my T-shirt. Next time you see me, I'm going to wear a T-shirt with that equation. I'll put a trademark pending on it, and we'll give that to you. Okay. In closing, you're going to end off the show. I'm going to count you in, and I want you to tell us who should get in touch with you, where they can get in touch with you, what you can help with. Just take a moment, promote yourself. And on that note, I'm just going to ring us out. I'm going to say goodbye, and I'll reach out to you later. And so thank you so much for that. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to officially say that we had one of the most fascinating guests on the show ever, and that's Faris. I mean, something that I truly believed in for so long, something that I use without the complex knowledge that you have. And still today, I sat here and I gained so much insight. And I really just want to completely thank you for everything. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your time. And I wish you all the best. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Faris, everybody.
Thank you very much, Deon. It's been a real pleasure to join you and your audience today. And do you know what? I'd love to carry on the conversation with you and the audience. And the best way to do that is one of two ways. Look up my company, Shiogato, at www.shiogato.com. I'm sure Deon will put the spelling of that in the link. And the other way to do it is look up me on LinkedIn. There's only one Faris Aranki on LinkedIn. I've really checked. I post there daily. I share a lot of EQ, IQ, SQ tips. And I just reply to every message I get. So come and find me, come and connect, come and send me a message, and we'll pick up the conversation.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.